Welcome back to Long Live Baseball. So happy you're with us. Today, we will be discussing Carlos Correa as the world turns. Which direction will it go? Will the Butler get his revenge? I mean, will he sign anywhere? Who knows? Eric Hosmer is now a Chicago Cub. We will discuss that. And the Cardinals have gone radio silent, although they appear to be interested in a certain player. Ooh, I think maybe we've run out of things to talk about. But today, of course, as always, joining me is the one and only Cubs aficionado, the best frenemy Cubs fan I know. His name's Mike Jones. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well, Seth, and yourself?
Oh, I'm doing just dandy. Aside from all the nonsense, I think have we come to a place in baseball, in the baseball media, where all you have to do is just say, "Yep, they're interested in a certain player. I can't tell you who that player is or name any sources, but I can guarantee that this is going to get a lot of clicks." I mean, they're interested in a certain player, Mike, because I'm going to time this out where nobody's really talking about anything and the Cardinals aren't doing anything, but they're interested in a certain player. Certain player. They're not done making moves. Come on.
A certain player to be named later?
Player. Oh, who could it be?
I wonder who it's going to be. Let's get excited.
I think, I don't understand. It's so stupid. John Heyman's at it again. Supposedly there's another mystery team. He already used the Cardinals as a mystery team. So I don't know if he can use the Cardinals again as another fake mystery team.
So now wait. So what you're saying is, if I'm hearing you correctly,
that
the Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinals, are interested in a mystery player.
Yeah,
that's big news, man. That's big news.
This is it's like playing Clue. Did Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the ballroom, or who did it? It's like John Mozeliak in the front office taking a nap again.
Okay, listen.
The trade deadline.
Listen, it seems like to me you've got to scroll down a little bit on the show notes. Go to the tweets of the week, because I'm going to steal one. I'm going to insert one right now because I think you're going to like it. Take a look at the Ryan. I think it's the Ryan Scholl. I got to give credit. We have
the same Scholl tweet of the week. No, it's different because I also have a Ryan Scholl one. Right?
Do you really?
Yeah. I almost put that one up. Yeah, that's a good one. You want to let the audience know, the podcast audience know what you're talking about?
Yeah, at @the_Ryan_Scholl if you want to look at it yourself. But John Mozeliak being escorted from his office in Busch Stadium just hours after signing Carlos Correa to a 5-year, $90 million deal. They're arresting the guy, walking him out of the good stuff.
It's funny. That's good. That's good. But hey, enough of us. Enough of this. Let's talk about something important.
Yes.
Did you know that sliced bread was first manufactured by machine and sold in the 1920s by the Chillicothe Baking Company in Missouri? Did you know that?
Best thing since unsliced bread.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have been possible. Well, I guess it would have been possible because you had to slice your own bread.
The Chillicothe Baking Company.
Yeah,
I have a hard time believing that.
Well, it's true. It's on the internet, so it's.
Is that why the French have baguettes?
I don't know.
Because baguettes, when you have a baguette, you don't really. Is that what they call them? A baguette? I think you can get
a form of bread. I think you can also hit somebody over the head with it.
Right, but don't you just tear it? Like you just. They don't slice that stuff.
No.
No. That'd be too uncouth.
Uncouth. Yeah, it'd be
or something.
uncouth. Yeah, that's exactly what it would be.
To slice it, you got to tear it.
Yeah, you got to tear it, dip it in your wine. I mean, I don't know what the French do with their bread.
Listen, what do I listen?
They put
Well,
frog legs on it. I don't know.
I do know this: don't steal it, because if you steal it, you end up going to jail and get followed around by some guy who's after you for the rest of your life, even when you're trying to just protect your daughter during the French Revolution.
Oh, well.
Sorry, I went down a real rabbit trail there, but anyway.
Well, also, the Earl of Sandwich, John Montagu, who lived in the 1700s, reportedly invented the sandwich so he wouldn't have to leave his gambling table to eat.
Okay, so hold on a second, then. Hold on a second. If a guy in the 1700s created the sandwich before sliced bread was created in the 1920s in Chillicothe, Missouri, what did he do? Did he just take a bunch of stuff like Dagwood and put it on 2 loaves of bread? And with a name like John Montague, he's probably a French guy.
Probably. I mean, it wouldn't be fair to assume,
maybe an English guy.
Or he's the Earl of Sandwich, so wherever Sandwich is.
So he's got to be English, right?
I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you see, you and your rabbit trails, man.
What do you mean rabbit trails?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking the Earl of Sandwich. There's actually a sandwich store called the Earl of Sandwich. Okay, so he was from England. He was from England. But my question is, the more important question is, if he created the sandwich, what did that look like prior to sliced bread? Did it kind of look like a Subway sandwich where but you have to slice that?
Yeah.
So was it just 2 loaves of bread on either side of all sorts, kind of like a Dagwood, which is a phenomenal sandwich, by the way. Dagwood knew how to make a sandwich. You probably don't even know who I'm talking about, but Dagwood was the sandwich king. Do you know who Dagwood is?
I have no idea.
That shows our age difference. He was one of the best Sunday comic strips you could read, and he made the meanest sandwich. Like, he would put a slice of bread and then every ingredient that he could find in the refrigerator and another slice of bread. It was a masterpiece. A masterpiece of a sandwich. Yeah. They actually called the sandwich the Dagwood. They named it after him. Yep.
Okay.
A fictional sandwich named after a fictional character, kind of like a mystery player to be named later.
Hey, there's a segue.
Bringing it right back.
Nice. All right. So let's talk about maybe a mystery player.
Well, wait a minute, though. I have a question.
Oh, Lord. Okay. What is it?
Do you prefer sliced bread or torn bread? Which, I mean, if you're just eating bread, would you like to eat a slice of bread or have something like a loaf of bread and just tear a part of the bread off of there?
Well, Abby has gotten into baking lately, and she's been baking some amazing bread. So, and that's bread that you don't slice. That's not sliced. It doesn't come from a store in a bag already sliced. So,
yeah, I think
freshly baked bread is something that not a lot of people talk about, but it is very underrated. If you get good fresh bread, it is unbelievable.
You were advocating then for the torn bread.
Yes, if it's done properly.
Yeah. I think I would agree with that assessment.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Moving on.
Earl of Sandwich be damned.
Yes, and speaking of things to be damned and hopefully forgotten about for a long time, Carlos Correa apparently hitting a snag, and I'd say it's a big snag. It's a big old 12-year, $315 million snag. Apparently the Mets are getting frustrated with Carlos Correa and his agency. Go figure, Scott Boras. John Heyman, Scott Boris's mouthpiece, saying, "Oh my God, there's another team interested. Maybe." I don't think so. The only thing that I've heard tweeted out, and I don't know if it's legit or not, is that the Twins potentially. But
back in the Mets.
Yeah. Well, Mike, don't you think this opens the door for Carlos Correa to potentially have another 1 or 2 year deal signing with somebody else? Don't you think that's possible now? Or do you think he ends up signing with the Mets? Because personally, I don't think there's any other team out there. If the Giants aren't going to do it, and the Mets, who seemingly have thrown caution to the wind and are just signing everybody for any amount of money that their new owner, I can't think of his name right now, just doesn't care. If they're not going to do it, then who's going to do it? That's kind of my thought. Like, you're running out of teams, at this point in free agency. He's clearly the biggest fish left. What's going to happen, Mike?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, listen, Carlos Correa is going to end up somewhere. Right? I mean,
yeah.
The baseball, there are not enough players available of his quality for him not to end up somewhere. But he's not going to be Trevor Bauer because of an injury. What I think's what's going to happen is whatever team can manufacture, and I don't know, that could be the Cubs, it could be the Cardinals, it could be the Mets, it could be the Twins. I think there are a lot of teams that are right now in their office trying to figure out the legal documentation, and I think probably Carlos Correa's medical situation is known all throughout baseball. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, what insurance company that's out there will cover that, will insure that injury for the amount of money that he's looking for. And so I think they've got lawyers, whatever they do in the back offices, in the back alleys, under the tables, to figure out the legalese of how do we sign this guy and protect ourselves if he gets injured. Mm-hmm. And so there's got to be all sorts of language in there about if this injury, this pre-existing condition, blah, 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 blah. And then whoever can get that figured out soonest will have it. That's my take. Who's it going to be? Who knows? I mean, we thought he was signing with who was it before the Mets?
The Giants.
The Giants, yeah. I mean, yeah. And then he's off to Metland, and then now, wait, we're worried too. And then there's a mystery player in St. Louis, and maybe the Twins are going to be back in the mix. And could the Cubs sign Carlos Correa? And I think what you were suggesting earlier was that a lot of this stuff, whether it's John Heyman or Jordan Bastain or Barstool Sports or John Boy Media, I mean, who knows? Is it all just clickbait? I mean,
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I do.
You want to have what does baseball do during the off season? How do you keep baseball in the forefront during the off season? Drama. Everybody, why do people love drama? Some people love drama.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I was listening to another podcast, the Hard 9 podcast, which you can also find on YouTube. I think it's really good. It's a father-son podcast where they talk about the Cardinals. And they brought up a really good point that I don't think a lot of people have considered, is the fact that Carlos Correa, considering that the Mets have Francisco Lindor, is going to have to play third base for them. And or you have to do something with Lindor, either move him to second or something, if you want Carlos Correa to play shortstop. And if you do make the move to put Carlos Correa to third base, like, he kind of loses some of his value because he's not a shortstop anymore, right? Like, he's great. He's a great hitter for a shortstop.
Right.
But if you compare his numbers to other third basemen like Nolan Arenado, then he all of a sudden he doesn't stack up as well playing third base. So I thought that was a really good point, and something the Mets should have considered before they signed him, and they still technically haven't signed him. So he kind of loses his value a little bit if you have to move him over to third base, because he's not doing what most third basemen do, or what the average third baseman hits is not what the average shortstop hits. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if you can plug him into that shortstop role, which you already have a good shortstop, Francisco Lindor, and I get it, you try to get as many good hitters on the field as you can, and that's what they're trying to do. But I would just kind of, I think this is so fascinating. I think he does end up signing with the Mets, because I just don't know what other potential solution is out there. I know we've kind of jested at potentially him signing with the Cubs. Same problem with him signing with the Cubs, by the way, that they already have a shortstop. He'd lose some of his value. He'd have to move to third base, which I'd say there is an opening. Although I would think that's where Chris Morel's going to play, right? And you have to find out what you have in him. Because I don't think your pitching's where it needs to be yet. So I think this is a year, and we'll talk more about how I feel about certain other signings that the Cubs have made later in the show. But it just doesn't feel like it makes a ton of sense for Chicago, and it sure as heck doesn't make a lot of sense for St. Louis either. We have Tommy Edman. It makes more sense. You can move Tommy Edman over to second base, slot Correa into shortstop. Again, it all comes down to dollars and cents, which the Cardinals are not going to do. But I think it's a unique opportunity for the Cardinals if they get him on a 2 or 3 year deal to align him with Arenado and Goldschmidt in their prime. And all of a sudden, you can become the best offense in baseball because you already were a good offense. I think the Cardinals were 5th in runs scored last year. So it's a unique opportunity, I think. I think it's something they should talk about. But are the Cardinals going to do it? No, because it's not ever something they look at their infield as settled. If they're going to make a move for a player, it's going to be a pitcher. I think they view their position players as pretty well settled. So
you don't think the Cardinals are going to do anything ever? I've noticed that. If there's one thing that I've noticed,
well, they don't. So,
well, I mean, yeah, and so as a Cardinals fan, the tweet that I mentioned earlier, expound on why a Cardinals fan finds that even funnier than I do.
Well, because I'm assuming the minute that happens, Bill DeWitt is in his office firing him for spending money. I'm assuming. I don't know why, because apparently you can't. The famous quote is Bill DeWitt once said, "You can't make that much money in baseball." And anyway, he coming from an owner who has a team that isn't top 5 in attendance every year, and merchandise sales are off the charts, and Ballpark Village is hopping most weekends and most night games. So if the Cardinals can't make money, if that's what you're saying, and we know there's revenue sharing in baseball, $1 billion television deal, it just that was not a good look for Bill DeWitt. And so I don't know necessarily where I'm going with that, but it just appears as though, and the Cardinals are, to their credit, they're usually in the top 10 in payroll. This year, they're 15th, 16th, which has a lot of people up in arms. But the reason they're 15th or 16th is because those people in the top 10 are spending money, baby. They are just out of control spending money. The Yankees, even the Red Sox. And I don't think it's a good look that the Cubs, who are quote unquote rebuilding, are spending more money than the Cardinals, yet the Cardinals are favored to win the Central. I think that optically looks terrible for them.
But let's talk about it from that financial perspective. And you brought up the Red Sox. Okay. So the deal that the Mets originally had with Carlos Correa, if I'm not mistaken, was let me see if I can find the exact money.
12 years, $315 million.
Okay.
I think.
12-year, $315 million. So now let's talk about the Red Sox, Rafael Devers, right?
Yep.
11-year, $313.5 million. Do those numbers sound very familiar? Okay. So And at what level do we say, listen, and is Devers a Boris guy too? I don't know that.
I'm
I
not sure
don't know if
either.
he is or not. But the point being, if you've got these guys that are very comparable and they're spending all this money for these guys, and the ball club, St. Louis or Chicago or whatever, I think they're looking at that big spending and going, what are these teams doing? What like we can still get it done without having to spend that kind of money. Do you know how much? And I don't know if this math was correct. I just saw it on online. Rafael Devers is going to make how much? Do you know how much he's going to make each day for the next 11 years?
I do not.
$82,500 a day.
Yeah.
A day for the work that he, according to the interweb.
For a team that is probably not going to be better than the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah. It's but listen, you can't make money in baseball.
No. And I think, and not to, because I feel like I've railed this point home many times on this show and certainly on our last episode. I think where I get frustrated is not the amount of spending that the Cardinals typically do. Like this year is lower. I think there are reasons why it's lower because you have a lot of younger players who are playing on league minimums that you don't really see a improvement on. Like, yeah, sure, you could have gone out and signed Brandon Nimmo as an outfielder, but that's not really much of an improvement on Dylan Carlson that you have under control and way cheaper, right?
Right.
So it didn't make a lot of sense for the Cardinals to upgrade their outfield. Oh, everybody's clamoring for Brian Reynolds. That doesn't make a lot of sense because, first of all, how big of an upgrade is Brian Reynolds? And second of all, he plays terrible defense. So your outfield is one of the, I mean, you say what you will, the Cardinals outfield with O'Neill and Carlson and potentially Nootbaar is one of the more athletic, defensively sound outfields in baseball. And it certainly was when we had Harrison Bader as a Gold Glover out there. So I don't think the Cardinals really saw much of an upgrade there. So I think there's a rational explanation as to why their payroll is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the frustration, though, is that they'll never, and I say this all the time, they need an ace. They've needed an ace for, let's face it, a couple years now, 2 to 3. Like you could argue for the last 3 years, they have not had an ace because Jack Flaherty's had injury problems. Wainwright's not the same guy anymore. Michaelis has been good, but is his stuff knockout, strikeout stuff? It's not. He's a solid pitcher. He's a great regular season pitcher that can eat up innings. I'm not saying he's not. And I think that the Cardinals are eventually going to extend him. But the Cardinals have a lot of 3, 4, 5 starters in their rotation right now. And the frustrating part for me is this has been a glaring need for a long time, but you've tried to make Jack Flaherty that guy, and he hasn't been that guy. You've tried to reincarnate Adam Wainwright into the 25-year-old Adam Wainwright, and he's not that guy anymore. You've seen this as a need for a long time, and you've done nothing to address it other than, oh, let's trade for John Lester at the trade deadline at the last minute. Oh, let's trade for Montgomery, who was great, and Quintana, who was great. He didn't resign at the trade deadline at the last minute. Like it feels like you don't have a plan, right?
Who had the best numbers for the Cardinals on the mound last year?
Probably depends on the time. It was probably Quintana and the time that he.
That's what I wondered, and they let him go for a song, right?
Yeah, I'll never understand that, but it just feels like they won't go get what they really need unless it's a good value, and they certainly won't pay $1.25 to get something they need that's valued at $1. You know, like, so that is where the Cardinals are cheap. It's like you're so close. You've made all these moves that are great moves. You Arenado opted in. You traded for Goldschmidt. You have all these great prospects, and what you really need is to bolster that rotation, to get a legitimate arm, to spend some of these prospects, to spend some money or something to put the Cardinals in the conversation with the Braves, with the Phillies, with the Mets. And all that would take is a top of the line starter that you can throw out day one of a playoff game, no questions asked. And we have not had that for the last 3 years. And it's like, you could go out and sign Max Scherzer. No, we're not ever going to pay $30 million for a player, regardless of how good he is. Regardless, and if you're never willing to do that, I'm going to call into question your willingness to win.
All right. So what about Gordon Graceffo?
He's a prospect right now. He looks great, but he's a prospect. He could like with all these prospects, it could turn into that, and you hope they do. But I don't think he's a guy they're trading. I heard Tink Hence is really good too.
Well, but I'm just saying, I mean, you got a guy who's throwing 98, 99 miles an hour, from what I understand. Is he ready? Is he MLB ready? Is it time for him to come up? Is that what your front office is talking about? I mean,
maybe in 2024, but that's not helping Arenado and Goldschmidt right now.
So you don't feel like this is the year for him?
No, I don't think so at all. Like he's probably a year or two away, I would assume.
All right.
Jordan Walker, I mean, the talk, he could be up with the big club this year, but I'm not saying it's an easy job. I'm not saying that, but
well, listen,
and you do have a responsibility to balance all that out, which the Cardinals have done a really good job of. However, there comes a time when you got to go out and get what you need, and what you need is a top of the line starting pitcher. Easier said than done. I get it. But you've had opportunities over the past couple years, and you've let guys go. And likely they'll probably let Jack Flaherty go because this is his contract year too. When we can talk about that more, but do you have any final thoughts on this discussion at the beginning?
I'm just throwing out there to you, John Denton, who's a guy that you're probably more familiar with than I am, because I was like, who is this? And later in the show notes, I talk about this, and this is Graceffo. John Denton's headline article: Cards young flamethrower ready for MLB opportunity. And so I don't know whether or not he is, but I just present it to you as a possibility.
I would be very surprised. John Denton knows more than I do, so I defer to his judgment on that. But I would be very surprised if he's up with the big league club this year. And, then if he gets the big league club and struggles, you don't want to rush those guys,
Right.
So and the Cardinals have a history of taking their time with players like this. In recent history, they've brought up Dylan Carlson. That surprised the hell out of me when they brought him up.
Right.
When they did. So maybe they will. I don't know. But that's a big if, man. That's a big if. I just, if that works out, great. Then I will come on this show and admit that I'm wrong. But it just feels like the last several years the Cardinals have had an opportunity to add a top of the line starting pitcher, whether it be in free agency or at the trade deadline, and it just kind of feels like they've done the bare minimum. But I digress. I just feel as though they're that one move away from being a legitimate playoff contender. I mean, look at how close they were to beating the Phillies.
Right.
And the Phillies made it to the World Series, man. Like this much difference. Like one player here or there, an injury here or there. That's the difference between making it to the World Series and losing in the first round of the playoffs. The fact that you didn't have a bullpen arm that you trusted other than Ryan Helsing, you felt that you had to stretch him out. And the fact that he struggled early on and you didn't have another option to turn to cost you. That's the difference right there. That game should have been the Cardinals that was the Cardinals game to lose. and they lost it because they weren't deep enough and they were trusting younger players to fulfill these huge roles for them. And I love Ryan Helsley, but he should have been taken out of that game. And the reason they didn't take him out is they didn't have another option that they felt like they trusted more. And Ollie Marmol, first year as a manager, I get it. But this is what frustrates me about the Cardinals is they don't ever address depth and needs the way they should. And you've seen that the last couple off seasons, I think, where were grave errors and kind of lost seasons where if you make a move here or there, you're a legit World Series contender. And if you don't make that move, you're like, we'll win the Central. And it kind of feels like they're in the we'll win the Central debate category.
Well, and you mentioned the Phillies and making it to the World Series, and I do have to point out that the Cubs swept the Phillies last year.
Yeah. Didn't the Cardinals sweep the Cubs? So that means the Cardinals are the best team of all time.
The Cubs swept the what? The Cardinals swept the Cubs? What? Yeah, I'm talking about on the season. The Cubs 6-0 against the Phillies.
Okay. Well, that's a cool stat. Okay.
that I'm brushing off, that I'm just going to brush off. And even though I was just talking about the Phillies made it to the World Series.
That's a fact. In the regular season, you gotta win some games in the regular season more than 6.
I'm just saying maybe the Cubs pitching isn't as bad as you think it is. Okay. Maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. Maybe they had one of the lowest ERAs in the last couple months of baseball. Okay. Here comes the what you always give me a hard time about how much hope and promise we have, or so that's I'm looking forward to this next season, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, especially when the Cardinals sign Carlos. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's talk about some of the other moves that were made around the league, and we'll build up to the Cubs move. Corey Kluber to the Red Sox on a 1-year deal. I think that's fine and dandy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Kluber's obviously a good pitcher and has a good track record, and these 1-year deals are very interesting to me amongst the deals that are paying guys $82,000 a day.
Yeah,
over 11 years. I just find the dynamic of a 1-year deal versus an 11-year deal. How are those determinations made? You know what I mean? I mean, yeah. if I were a front office baseball guy, these big long contract deals, they're questionable to me, man. I mean, Jason Hayward, long contract deal. Eric Hosmer, long contract deal.
Yep.
Long contract deal. You can talk about a lot of them that are just, I don't know. They always seem to come back and bite teams in the butt.
Yeah. Well, you're admitting that, at least I think so, that, we're going to get 4 or 5 good years out of this guy, and then we'll just eat it at the end because we're trying to compete right now, and we have to give this guy 11 years because there are 4 or 5 other teams that are willing to do that. So we have to overpay, or at least this is what the Scott Boras's of the world would like you to believe.
Right.
So, that's why the Cardinals will never do something like that. But you're right. That's a whole nother conversation that we could get into perhaps later. But some other signings, Marlins signed Gene Segura. I like that. Diamonds signed Evan Longoria on a 1-year deal. I thought that was kind of interesting for a Diamondbacks team that looks to compete a little bit. I think that the Diamondbacks could be good this year. Brewers, again, I don't know why the Cardinals wouldn't do something like this. Brewers signed Wade Miley, just a crafty lefty pitcher for depth, and then the Phillies signed Craig Kimbrell, which the Cardinals definitely couldn't use more bullpen depth. But I see all these signings and I think to myself, and I know the Cardinals have a lot of younger players and prospects, but it just feels like a Craig Kimbrell could be a difference maker for you in the bullpen. And I know that you're planning on using the guy that you drafted in the Rule 5 draft, but it just feels like, that anyway, I've beaten that racehorse as much as I can, I think. But we're leading up to the fact that the Cubs signed Eric Hosmer on a 1-year contract where they're paying him nickels and dimes, and the Padres are paying him to go away. So what do you think about that, Mike?
Listen, we talked about this a little bit pre-show, and I think it's honestly it's a great signing. I'm not excited about it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like, oh, we signed Eric Hosmer, but I think it's a great signing. First of all, he's a former Burlington Bee. Okay, I like that. He's a World Series champ. He's a Gold Glove guy. Obviously he's older. We've got some younger guys that are going to be coming into that position. You've got a guy who's got experience in the big games that can pour into those guys, hopefully. I saw some nice tweets between him and our pitching staff in regards to that have played for Team USA together. And there seems to be some good banter going back and forth between the two of them. Marcus Stroman. And so, I think the one thing about baseball, you mentioned Craig Kimbrell, and we can talk about guys like that, but I think one thing about baseball with the bouncing around from team to team, which I am not a fan of, I wish that there was something that baseball teams had to keep players. I think I've talked about this on the show before. Like if a team wins a World Series and they're not allowed to trade until they're dethroned or something like that. You know what I mean? I think that would be an interesting dynamic. But the one thing about baseball is every spring the season starts anew and hope begins anew, right? And every fan base in baseball is clamoring that their team is going to win it all this year, right? And the excitement that builds with that.
That's just the Cubs, I think.
I don't think that's just the Cubs. I mean, I watched, if you've watched what's the Fever Pitch, I think that there are a lot of teams. Of course, that's the American League Cubs, so the Red Sox. So maybe they have kind of the same culture in that regard. Mm-hmm. However, what I'm getting at is that every season starts anew. The off season, players get to work out. They get to do things. Kyle Schwarber's a prime example of that. Kyle Schwarber put some pounds on, during an off season and then came back fit as a fiddle the next year and had a great year. And you can do that in baseball more so than any other sport. I think a guy can put in some work and come back and all of a sudden it's like, oh, holy cow, brand new year. Eric Hosmer, when he was with the Padres, he was tearing the cover off the ball for the first couple of months of that contract. We can't forget about that, right? Who knows what other dynamics come into play. But for the league minimum, when you've got another organization that's paying it's almost like an accounting error. That's what you're paying him for a 1-year contract, right? And so I like the signing. I think it's good. I think playing at Wrigley Field is different than playing in any other ballpark in America. And that brings some inspiration and let's get this done kind of mentality. And all of that to say, and I'm going to look, even hopefully at some numbers here, if I can find it. It's a good, and I'm looking at an article by Jack Vita, a good signing, buy low bridge to Matt Mervis. Okay. because we don't know if Matt Mervis is quite ready yet, or if he's going to be the first baseman of the future for the Cubs. We don't know that either. But get this, Hosmer is owed $39 million over the next 3 years by the San Diego Padres, and we're paying him $750,000. And so we're immediately upgrading at first base. We had the Frank Schwindel experience and Alfonso Rivas, who now is going to, I can't remember, Toronto. I don't remember. Anyway, neither of those guys really gave us a whole lot. Rivas had a .235 batting average. His slash line went 322, 628 with 3 home runs and 25 RBIs. And Schwindel, even though, Frank the Tank became a thing and all of that, last year he slashed just 229, 277, and 635 and was designated for assignment midway through the 2022 season. So Hosmer's an upgrade from what we had as a shared position last year. And so I think he's a good gapper, right? He was hitting 272 for the Padres before he was traded at the deadline, and he batted 269 a season earlier. Now, like you mentioned before the show, his power is down. Okay. He's not hitting a whole lot of home runs. He hit 22 home runs in 2019 and 20 last season, right? Or over the last 2 seasons. I'm sorry. And so is he the long-term answer for the Cubs? There's a reason they signed him to a 1-year contract. No, he is not. He's a gapper. He's a gapper. And where do you get a gapper? Look at what the Cubs have done during this offseason. They have a Gold Glover, former World Series champion at first base. They have Cody Bellinger, former MVP, former World Series champion. They signed him. So some of these signings, to me, are really wise signings. So I like the Eric Hosmer move.
I think if it doesn't affect Matt Mervis's usage, because I'm looking at the Cubs depth chart right now, and I think this is updated, but I'm honestly not sure because it's on ESPN. It looks like Matt Mervis, it doesn't have Eric Hosmer on here yet, but it has Matt Mervis slotted in at first base. So if you can kind of platoon him and Matt Mervis and kind of swap them out for DH, because their DH right now would probably be somebody like Patrick Wisdom or Nelson Velasquez, somebody like that, because their outfield is Ian Happ, Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki. And it's puzzling to me. Yeah. If you think Matt Mervis is not ready, then sure, whatever. But maybe in a shorter porch, I know Petco, whatever it's called, San Diego's ballpark is a tough place to hit a deeper field. So maybe he gets some of his power back with a shorter field as a left-hander in Wrigley Field. Maybe. But if it were me, the Cubs have a lot of these reclamation projects on their roster, right? They have, Cody Bellinger, and now they have, Eric Hosmer,
Nick Madrigal.
Yeah. Who's probably a bench player for you at this point. Ian Happ. I mean, is he part of the future? I don't know.
All-Star, Gold Glove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he's only got 1 year left on his contract. I could be wrong, but they're going to have to make a decision on him soon. So I think this is another year of trying to figure it out. I think you guys have some good pieces. I just really hope that Eric Hosmer, if that starts to affect Matt Mervis's usage, then I think it's a bad signing, because what can you possibly gain from signing Eric Hosmer that you don't already know? I mean, unless you're going off the emotional, non-logical, oh, he could turn into 2017, 2015 Eric Hosmer again in Chicago. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So and then so if you're not trying to win games, it doesn't make much sense to. I think you should bring up some of the younger guys, see what you have, because still think your farm system isn't quite there yet. I think as long as it doesn't affect your ability to determine whether Matt Mervis is ready or not, or if he's the guy or not, then I guess I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to put you in an awkward position where you're like third in the division, second in the division, maybe. Then your draft pick's not going to be as good. You might be a fringe playoff team. I get it. That's best case scenario. So I don't know. I kind of shrug my shoulders at it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm not sure if Eric Hosmer's a bench player, then fine, whatever. Then I would have wanted the Cardinals to sign him for that price as a bench player. But if he's going to be your everyday first baseman and that's going to cost Matt Mervis reps, then I don't like it.
Yeah. I just don't think we're 100% sure that Matt Mervis is ready for the major league level. I think that's why you see that signing. I think if Eric Hosmer could give us a good first half as Mervis prepares to be ready, maybe for the second half after the All-Star break, or he's a good placeholder. I think he's a good placeholder, and he gives us more production than we had last year at the position. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like I said, and I think I called it a great signing. Okay, maybe it's not great, but it's not just good either. I don't think. I think it's somewhere between those two because of the value, the money, and the money that saves you to potentially, to keep you under the luxury tax and to potentially bring in another starter or to potentially bring in another bullpen piece or something like that. I think if I remember reading correctly, I think it was like $19 million available to make some of those moves. And so we're probably looking at 1-year deals for those types of players on the mound as well. Because it seems like that's what the trend with, if you're not ace pitching, an ace pitcher, and I think we feel like Marcus Stroman right now is that guy potentially. If you're not looking for that, then you go out and you find a guy that like a Kluber that you can sign for a year with the money you have left over. And I'm okay with that. That's great. Deep in the rotation, deep in the bullpen, and okay.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's a transition year for the Cubs. I would be shocked if they made the playoffs, just because kind of you look around the National League and there's the Phillies and the Mets and the Braves, and I think those are your NL East and and wild card teams. And then in the West, it's likely the Dodgers, I would assume.
Right.
And then in the Central, which we could talk about later on, Cardinals are the favorite, but the Brewers aren't too far behind, according to Las Vegas. So this is where the complacency drives me crazy. Which I'm going to transition to this if it's all right. I'm going to skip tweet of the week for now because this is in the title of the show. As my dogs, I don't know if you can hear them; they're barking in the background. The Cardinals are supposedly interested in a certain player. There's this former, I'm going to bring up the article now that I put in the show sheet. According to this writer from The Athletic, Jim Bowden, former general manager, I guess, for the Reds, wrote, that the Cardinals are interested in a certain player and they are not done making moves yet. And my initial reaction to this was, wow, we have certainly run out of things to talk about, haven't we? Because the Cardinals, aside from signing Wilson Contreras, haven't done anything. And likely they won't do anything else because, I mean, it doesn't really make sense to do anything else. I mean, if you look at the free agents left on the market, there's not really an upgrade to be had other than depth, which I don't think you can discount depth. I think the Cardinals do overrate what is in their system, and they overrate what depth they have. They did that last year, and then they've done that the past 2 years, which is extremely frustrating. But if you look at what the Cardinals did in 2022, I think fans should just relax a little bit because in 2022, and I didn't really realize this until I looked it up. If you look at the Cardinals free agent signings, it was Drew Verhagen, who's still on the roster in the bullpen, March 11th. Nick Whitgren was signed March 13th, and then Corey Dickerson was signed March 18th. All right, so we are sitting here January 7th, 2023. I do not think the Cardinals are done making moves. I think they will sign a free agent here or there. Do I think it's going to be somebody impactful? No, I don't. Are they interested in trading for a certain player? Maybe, but as we all know, the Cardinals are likely not going to make a move unless they feel it's of a proper value. You know, like I think they're willing to give up prospects, or is like, I think it's kind of funny that this Bernie Michaelis is a writer and a radio talk show host, local radio talk show host in the St. Louis area, and he calls the Cardinals they protect the Fabergé eggs, is what he says. He calls the prospects because they'll never trade. They protect those like Fabergé eggs. They value them so highly, and I just don't see them doing something like that. I would love for them. I can tell you what I would love to see happen. I would love for them to trade for Shane Bieber. I would love for them to trade for Tyler Glasnow. I think those are moves you can make. I think those are possible. And I think that makes you immediately, like if you make that move, I think that makes you a contender for the World Series because you know, like I've said, you know who that day one starter is. And right now, is it Jack Flaherty? Probably, if he pitches well in a contract year, which he probably will because it's a contract year, and that seems to be what happens in a contract year. But I would just urge Cardinal fans to relax. Our team is good, all right? We are favored currently to repeat as NL Central champions. Is there a pathway to us crashing and burning and falling and flat on our face? Yes. There's always that possibility. I mean, will Goldschmidt repeat as a MVP? Probably not. He's probably going to fall off a little bit. Is Nolan Arenado going to do what he did last year? Probably not. He's probably going to fall off a little bit. Is Adam Wainwright going to be good? Is Adam Wainwright going to be good? Probably not. He's probably not going to be. He's 41 years old. So I hope these are the conversations that Cardinals fans are going to are not Cardinals fans. I hope these are conversations that they're having in the front office of what's realistic and what's just over the moon expectations for baseball players, that realistically. And I'm not saying Nolan Arenado is going to be bad. I'm not saying that, but he's in his 30s now. So it's you're laughing at me. Why?
Why do you feel that way? I mean, you're like Goldschmidt's going to fall off, and Arenado's going to fall off, and Wainwright's 41, and he's going to fall off.
Wainwright did fall. Did you see him pitch the second half of last year?
Wainwright's he's the outlier in this group. You're talking about the freaking National League MVP from last year, far and away, no argument, Paul Goldschmidt. How? I mean, Paul. Okay, could his numbers go down a bit? Yes, but this guy can. I mean, it pains me to say it as a Cubs fan. Give me Paul Goldschmidt all day long.
Well, yeah, we'll love to have him on our team. He's one of the best first basemen in baseball for sure. But what I'm saying is, what are realistic expectations for him? And I'm saying probably 25 home runs, 280 average, and 90 RBIs. Like, I feel like that's realistic, and that's a drop off from his, MVP year. I'm not like
So you're a realist.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Do I think, like, when you were talking, does every fan feel like their team right now? No, the Cardinals are not going to win the World Series. Not a chance. No 0.0% chance of winning the World Series right now. Now, if they go trade for Shane Bieber, possibly. I mean, possibly. That puts them in the conversation, but they're nowhere near the Braves. They're nowhere near the Mets. They're nowhere near the Phillies, in my opinion. I just
So
that's
you're a realist, not a pessimist.
probably both, honestly. I don't get me wrong, I'm going to be excited to watch them play. I think
Right.
that's baseball. But
Right.
I just, if we're going to, like, what's, to me, it's kind of like, what's the point of hovering in this mediocrity that we're hovering in? Like, if we're not willing to take the extra step, go the extra mile like these other teams are willing to do, then what are we doing? I don't know.
Okay.
Like, you put a great team on the field, I get it, but at some level, are you willing to do what it takes to push that team over the edge and to compete with these other teams? And the Cardinals have just proven time and time again that they're not willing to do that, and that's really frustrating as a fan. And I'm not saying you got to go out and spend $300 million like the Mets are. You don't have to do that, right? But this model that they're following just seems outdated. I don't know. And it's frustrating because you know that the division is not going to be this bad for this long. It's the Cubs are going to be, they're not, maybe not this year, but the year after, you better believe they're already spending more money than you are. So that's frustrating. So
You don't find that frustrating at all.
Yeah, well, I know you don't, but the Cubs are going to be set up, I believe. I think the Cubs are doing this right, where they're going to be the Dodgers, where they're going to be spending money and developing players just as good as you are. The Cardinals have gotten by on developing. But when the big shot teams in the big markets like Chicago, the Dodgers have already proven it to you. The Dodgers are currently doing this. They're developing and they're spending money. When the Cardinals are only developing, that means either you turn into the Oakland A's or you are going to just be you're forever going to be the bridesmaid and never the bride.
So you are a pessimist.
Yeah, that's where we are. That's the state of the Cardinals. So, yeah, are we going to win the Central this year? Probably.
Well,
are we going to make but if we don't make any more moves than we've made, it's a first round exit in the playoffs. Like,
all right. So here's my question for you. Yeah. You keep talking about the Cardinals non-moves. And I do want to point out that in the article on Yardbarker that you linked in the show notes, yeah, with the work stoppage player profile picture, the black silhouette with a question mark on the face, who's the mystery player? I want to point out that there's also over here a little pop-up that says want more Cardinal news and rumors. So there's more clickbait. Just put your email in. But my point is, are we going to talk about Pablo Lopez? Because he's the only player that's named in the article that you talked about in terms of a mystery player.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can.
I mean, we don't have to. I'm just saying, you've talked about adding a pitcher to the rotation, adding an ace, all that kind of stuff. Is Pablo Lopez the guy? 10-10, record last year, 3.94 ERA over his career. What did he have last year? WAR of 3.0. Went 10-10 through 32 games, 180 innings pitched, 174 strikeouts. Is that the guy you're looking for?
I would like that. He's only 26 years old. I think, we could sign him to, it all depends on what we're going to give up. But him, yeah, I would love that. I mean, a pitcher like of his caliber that that you are likely gonna. I mean, he would if we traded for him, he would be our day one playoff starter. Granted, we got to make the playoffs first, but that's what I mean though. Is there's a lot of question marks on this team. Flaherty, for instance, Wainwright, for instance, is Steven Matz going to be healthy? Who knows? I don't think it's as fair as some people are making it out to be. I think when he was healthy, which wasn't for very long, Matz was good. Michaelis has been injured before, so it's like if Michaelis and Matz go down again, and Wainwright's not very good, then all of a sudden your rotation's not just okay anymore. It's bad. It's a bad rotation. And that's where it could get really ugly. It could get really ugly really fast for the Cardinals. And so this is where I'm saying, like, not only are you lacking a top of the line rotation guy, you need more depth in the starting pitching rotation, because then all of a sudden, like, let's say a couple of those guys get injured and Wainwright's no good. Then it's Dakota Hudson and Matthew Liberatore, who got shelled when he was up in the major leagues and clearly wasn't ready for it. So that's what I mean. Like, you could have used the Jose Quintana. That's like,
well, Jose Quintana. It's funny that you bring that up, because I'm looking at Pablo Lopez's stats. And so I had to pull up Jose Quintana's stats from last year. 6-7 on the year. He was 6-7 with a 2.93 ERA. 32 games, 165 innings pitched with 137 strikeouts. Was that bullpen related, his record? Because his numbers sound better than Lopez.
Yeah.
Outside of the win-loss record.
Outside of his age, too. I think there's more optimism with his, Lopez is a 26-year-old player.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that if the Cardinals do trade for Lopez, and it makes sense for the Marlins to trade him too, because he's on a 1-year deal, or he's on the last year of his deal. And I think he's got a couple years of control, but he's due to be an unrestricted free agent in 2025. And that would give the Cardinals their third pitcher, if you count Dakota Hudson, on the roster under contract past 2024. So you have all, like, you see what I mean? Like, all of these things are stacking up in the column. Like, okay, we probably need a pitcher. Oh crap, like, we probably need a pitcher. Oh my God, we need a pitcher. Like, like, it looks nice now if you go to the depth chart. Oh, Jack Flaherty, Miles Michaelis, Jordan Montgomery. It is a good rotation, assuming it can stay healthy. But you got 41-year-old Wainwright in there, and trust me, I want Wainwright to be good. I'm not, but if you saw him pitch toward the end of last year, oh my God, like, it wasn't great at all. And so I don't want Wainwright to go out that way. So I'm not counting on, I don't know what you can count on with that. When they brought him back for what they brought him back for, I think contracts are always hard for me to understand or weird, but $17.5 million seemed like a bit much for him at 41 years old. But I'm just saying, there's potential problems creeping up for the Cardinals in the future.
I like the sounds of that.
Yeah, I bet you do.
I like the sounds of that.
It's not like the Cubs are going to be any good this year, though. So,
well, all right.
But yeah, so that, I mean, I do think that, at least I hope that they do trade for that certain player. But I just think that writing that is so lazy, and it's just a clickbait thing. I don't know if this guy actually knows what he's talking about. I don't know Jim Bowden, but I know his type. Like John Heyman. Oh, the Cardinals are interested in Dansby Swanson.
Arson
Judge. Yeah, like just fans just know who the Cardinals are. Okay, they're not this team. They probably should be at times. They should be interested in these players, but the Cardinals desperately need a pitcher. So if the certain players to be believed. I hope it's for a Pablo Lopez. I think Shane Bieber's honestly best case scenario. I just like his game.
You want a younger guy though. I mean, they let
Yeah.
Quintana go probably age, you think? I mean, would you take a guy whose last campaign he was 8-5 with who carries a 600 win loss percentage, 2.59 ERA. Would you take a guy like that?
I think so. I would take depth at this point. I mean, yeah, because
if he was 32, I mean,
yeah, it's funny that you said age. Like, did the Cardinals let him go because of age, and they just brought back a 41-year-old Adam Wainwright,
right?
And brought back the year before that, brought back a 2-year-old Albert Pujols and a 40-year-old Yadier Molina, and you can't tell me that you let Jose Quintana go because of age. You let him go because of money, because you're too cheap to pay him.
Would you take a guy that has over a 10-year career, who's 32 years old, has nearly 1,500 strikeouts?
Probably, yeah.
Would you take a guy if his name was Trevor Bauer?
I would, but they won't.
I
mean, honestly, it makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals to do that, but I think there are other factors at play. Do you think the Cubs? I mean, I know we talked about this last time. Is that something the Cubs would do?
Gosh, I just don't know. I think that the Cubs are probably going to pass on that because of the Addison Russell thing. And I know we talked about it last time, but the connection is probably too deep there, and there'd be, I don't know, that would just be like a bombshell. I think that guy's done, but you never know. The Mets are crazy.
I think the Mets make a lot of sense, honestly, for him. Yeah. So let's see what you got cooked up here. He said, what kind of Cubs propaganda do you have to talk about?
Well, I think, first of all, the one thing that we haven't talked about is Tucker Barnhart. Because the Cubs signed Tucker Barnhart to a deal, two-time Gold Glove Award winner. They're really prioritizing defense behind the plate. Interestingly enough, article that I read, Wade Miley, who just went to the Milwaukee Brewers from Chicago, was one of the guys that helped bring Tucker Barnhart to Chicago, saying it's a great place to play. That kind of thing. They were teammates on the Reds for 2 seasons. Jan Gomes and Barnhart sharing time behind the plate sounds like a very appealing thing to me. You've got 2 veteran catchers. He signed a 2-year deal worth $6.5 million guaranteed with a player option for 2024. And you've got a lefty and a righty. You've got a lefty and Barnhart and a righty and Gomes. And they've both got that defense first mindset, which I think is great. The Gold Gloves again. Some of the other stats, advanced metrics, defensive runs saved and a minus 2.3 framing runs. He had a hard time in Detroit with that. Took a hit there. But I think that's a good signing for the Cubs as well in the big picture, because obviously we needed catching. It's funny because when you look back, back in 2015, there's a in the article that I'm reading, there's a trivia question that says the Cubs enter the 2023 season, obviously without Wilson Contreras, as part of their catching group for the first time since 2015. Think about that. But the phrase catching group is an important phrase there, because the question is, how many catchers did Chicago use that season?
Probably 3, because you had Miguel Montero and you had Rossi, right?
Yep. And Kyle Schwarber, Wellington Castillo, and Taylor Tiergarten, and I don't even remember that name. I don't like who's that dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
But during the 2015 campaign, Chicago leaned on Miguel Montero the most, 825 innings. David Ross for 402 and a third. And then Schwarber, 136. People forget that Schwarber was a catcher.
Yeah.
Don't they? They forget in 2015. I mean, that not that long ago. Wellington Castillo, 64, and Teagarden, 34 games that season. So, catching group is a big phrase that, that it's brutal back there, man, behind the plate. And Wilson Contreras, for the last several years, has taken the brunt of that beating in Chicago, and
I think the Cardinals have a plan. I think there's, when it comes to injuries, like I say that, and then the Jack Flaherty debacle last year, trying to rush him back. I hope they have a plan. I think Kisner is going to factor into that, and Ivan Herrera too. So it would have made sense for them to sign another catcher, but I guess they like Kisner. I don't know. I don't think Kisner's very good, but I don't know. Well, they like him, so whatever. He's a backup catcher, so.
Yeah, and I don't know what Miguel Amaya's status is health wise, coming back, but that's a guy that could be helping out back there as well. And so I think that in the big picture there's some promise there behind the plate. I think that the pitching staff that we have, with those two catchers is, I think that's solid. You got some veteran catching back there, and that's what you need. I mean, David Ross was veteran catching when he came to us, World Series champ, all that. So, I think, and these guys, frankly, are David Ross type of guys, right? I mean, David Ross, like, people talk about David Ross and David Ross, David Ross. It's not like, I don't know, is he Hall of Fame bound when it's all said and done? I don't know. Looking at his numbers and things, but is he a steady Eddie? Real steady Eddie behind the plate for a lot of years, right?
Yeah, you need players like that too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Grandpa Rossi, you got it. And I would even throw, even though everybody talks about Yadier Molina like he's some Hall of Fame guy, he really was just a steady Eddie. I don't, and well, offense to Cardinals fans. I mean, is Yadi the Hall of Fame catcher that everybody? I don't know. Yeah.
He was only like the best defensive catcher in baseball for a long time. So anyway, no big deal. If he was a Cub, you'd be like standing on the desk, like trying to get him into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. The good news is for us that neither of our teams is on the list of Paul Casella's article, 7 teams with work to do before opening day.
Well, clearly he just felt like he needed to stop writing or something, because the Cardinals sure could use a pitcher. I'm just saying it. I don't know how many times we need to wake Mozeliak up, even though he's not the GM anymore. It's Michael Gersh, baseball president of operations. I want to share this tweet because I thought it was hilarious. If people are not familiar with the Savannah Bananas, and I don't know how Mike Jones feels about this really, but the Savannah Bananas, right? They are a baseball team where they do a bunch of silly stuff during their games, like dance in the middle of innings. Anyway, it's a real baseball team, and they have a live stream on YouTube, I think. And my tweet of the week was from the Savannah Bananas Twitter account, the SAV Bananas on Twitter. It says, rumor has it Carlos Correa is actually just holding out until we send him a contract. Sorry for the chaos, everyone. that was pretty good. Savannah Bananas. I like that. You should just go to their Twitter account and just look and see just some of the ridiculousness that happens during their games. Like right now, I'm watching a dance routine in the middle of the game. How do you feel about the Savannah Bananas?
Okay,
Mike?
listen, I'm almost ashamed to admit this, but the Savannah Bananas are going on the road this year. They're having a world tour, kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters. That's what I would compare the Savannah Bananas. Savannah Bananas are an entertainment event. But with the tweaking that they actually have some baseball players. I mean, like you said, they are a baseball team. Some of the Savannah Bananas are signing on to minor league contracts or going to the majors and things of that nature, which is really interesting dynamic. They can also play a little, but they're going on a world tour and they're going to be at Principal Park in Des Moines, and they added an additional game. So I signed up because it's not far from us. I signed up to for the ticket pre-sale thing or whatever. And this is how popular this event is. They sent out an email that said, hey, we crashed the system when we sent out the pre-sale deal. And because you're on the list, you're still on the list, but the chances of you getting tickets is really not very good because we're probably going to have a lottery because of all the ticket sales that we've already had with nonprofit groups and organizations and things of that nature. So Principal Park is going to be sold out for 2 days with fans for these Savannah Banana games. All right. But it's a spectacle. It's not baseball. It's not baseball. It's a spectacle. I think that it's an incredible marketing ploy. If you listen to the story of the Savannah Bananas, if you go in and dig into it, they went into an empty stadium in Savannah that was not making money and masterminded an incredible marketing ploy together. And the guy that did it, was baseball connected, and you cannot. They have a machine. They have built a machine, a money-making machine in that entertainment field. And so, yeah, you want to go for entertainment in that regard? Great. It's kind of like the WWE of the MMA, if there is such a thing.
Okay. Sorry, Savannah Bananas. You're not baseball, according to Mike Jones. All right. Is it time for your dictionary segment?
You asked. Well, wait, I don't get a tweet of the week. I mean,
you already did. You already snuck it in earlier.
No, that wasn't. That was part of the banter, the conversation that we were having.
Oh Lord! All right, what's your tweet of the week?
My tweet of the week, because it was also Cardinals related. I don't want that. Barstool Sports. I can't believe this, and I hope this wasn't my buddy that lives up in that area, but a Milwaukee man.
I'm looking at it right now.
Passed out in some bushes after getting hammers at a Brewers game back in September. He promptly woke up, broke into the stadium, and robbed the team's clubhouse. What?
Oh, my God.
I've seen video of Miller Park, and I don't know what they're calling it now. It's Miller Park. But I've seen videos of apparently someone at some point also drove a vehicle onto the grounds of – what is happening? Do they have no security at Miller Park?
I don't know. I'm looking at a picture right now of the Brewer man, the mascot, sliding down the slide. I mean, can't you get if you can pay a mascot, surely you can pay security, right? I don't know.
You would think 25-year-old Milwaukee man has been charged with felony burglary after admitting to stealing items from the Brewers clubhouse at American Family Field, Miller Park, last year. He drank at least 10 beers before leaving the stadium and passed out in some bushes outside of the stadium. When he eventually woke up, he stated that he walked up to the door of the stadium and began pulling on it until it opened. The criminal complaint states. He then found his way to the clubhouse and began taking items from the locker room.
All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Just pull on the door until it opens. You can get into Miller Park.
Yeah. All right. That's the tweet of the week. Tweets of the week are brought to you by Dixon's Baseball Dictionary, which we are going to pivot to right now. If you have not seen or heard of the Dixon Baseball Dictionary, 3rd edition, it's quite the book. Mike Jones buys one every day at Burlington by the Book. So shout out to them, and shout out to this segment, which is
it's got a theme song, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's a theme song.
It's the Dixon Baseball Dictionary segment of the show where Mike pulls out his dictionary and Seth runs and grabs his because he's not prepared.
Okay, so listen, I didn't put the page numbers on the show notes, but I figure let's do something that's kind of different, kind of interesting, kind of off the beaten path. Page 359. Have you ever heard of the Garden?
No, but I have to run and grab my dictionary.
You're fine. The Garden in baseball. And apparently it's on his bedstand because this is great nighttime reading. Listen, you want to sit down and have a book to read on your bedstand at night. This is a good one to have. And we're kind of working our way through the alphabet. And I think we're on the letter G. And so page 359, what is the Garden when you talk about that in baseball?
Well, I would assume it's either the infield or the outfield, right?
Yeah, good call. It is the outfield. Short answer for the outer garden. Term was used in the early days of baseball. More recently, Roy Blount Jr., Sports Illustrated in 2003, observed that, quote, in the right field corner, end quote, Trot Nixon, quote, patrols that garden for the Red Sox, end quote. The outfield is the garden because flowers grew wild in the fields where early games were held. So then also you refer to the guy that's out there, the Trot Nixons of the world, as the gardener, right? The Polo Grounds, according to the Dixon's Baseball Dictionary, flower beds were once featured in right and center fields at the Polo Grounds, but John McGraw had them uprooted to give his gardeners more range. So There you go.
Right. The Garden. Very good. The Garden is the outfield. So there you go. You learn something new on this show every week, every other week during the off season. But it's come to that time of the show where we're about to wrap it up. So we will bid you adieu here in a minute. But what is one prediction? Mike has been very good on these predictions. He said the Cubs were going to sign, what's his face? Lonnie Donegan.
Dansby Bronson.
Oh, yeah, Dansby Bronson. Good for him. He signed with the Cubs. So what's your prediction this week, Mike?
Yeah, wow. So this weekend is the Cubs convention.
They have a convention.
So they have
a convention?
They have a convention. A convention.
This sounds proper.
Do the Cardinals have a convention?
I don't know. I've been getting emails about something. I can't.
Yeah. The Cubs have a convention, and so the players all come out and the prospects come and they have panels and discussions. It's kind of like Comic-Con for baseball, right? For Cubs fans.
Oh, the Cardinals have what is it? You go ahead. I'll find it.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's all right. And so that's coming up this weekend. So here's the thing. I don't expect for there to be a lot. This is my bold prediction, is that I don't expect for there to be a lot of Cubs news this week because they're too busy. They got other things going on. They're worried about, setting up for the convention and the people coming to town and getting the players over there and all of that stuff. Not a very bold prediction, honestly, but
I think Mike should grab his regular dictionary and look up the word bold in it and find a better prediction. But anyway, so
okay.
The Cubs are going to do nothing. Good
non-Cubs related. Here's my bold prediction.
Okay.
Trevor Bauer to the Mets on a 1-year deal.
I like that. I like that a lot. Here's my bold prediction. I think the Mets are going to, I don't know if this is bold either. Maybe I need to look up the dictionary definition of bold. I think the Mets are going to sign Carlos Correa. I think this is a bunch of hubbub for nothing, bunch of noise for nothing. We don't have much to talk about in the baseball world anymore. So, oh my God, the Cardinals are interested in a certain player. Oh, great magician trick wizardry. What's your face from The Athletic? Good job. Great reporting. Some guy, certain player. Ooh, it sounds like a bunch of window dressing to me. Sounds like a bunch of look over here while I'm doing this over here. So stupid. I hate that so much. And it gets me to click on it every time. Certain player. I can't help myself. The Cardinals are. This is the sick part about it, Mike. I know there's not when I click on it, I know there's nothing. It's gonna lead me to nothing. It's like fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 168 times. That's me. That's on me, man. That's my problem. I'm going to own that right now. The media does it to me every time. The Cardinals are interested in blah. And this guy, my bold prediction is, and it's not that bold, the Cardinals aren't going to do anything either.
You need to look up bold.
Yeah. The Cardinals, there's certain player, my foot. They ain't going to do anything until they pull off a trade. And I heard what's his name, Charlie Marlowe, talk about how it could be Shane Bieber, and I hope he's right. I hope I'm wrong in this whole this circus, the John Heyman, Jim Bowden circus that they just keep twirling around these unicorn hula hoops of wizardry and nonsense that leads nowhere. It just leads to more clicks for them and more misery for people like me. So thanks for nothing, Jim Bowden. Thanks for nothing, John Heyman. The Cardinals are the mystery team for blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, good reporting. It's good. You're doing a great job. So anywho, now that I've offended almost everybody in the media, let's just say the Cardinals, they're going to make one more move. I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to be somebody, maybe a depth piece in the rotation or a depth piece in the bullpen or a left-handed bat that comes off the bench, something like that. Again, that's not very bold, but if I did have a bold prediction, it would be that the Cardinals are going to trade for a pitcher by the deadline. But we'll see. It's not much to I'm not a guy who does the certain player thing, Yeah. Like, because the headline of the Cardinals will sign a mediocre player before the season starts is not as flashy as certain player. Yeah. If we could just, maybe we should, I did put that in the title of the YouTube show. But facetiously, like making fun of it, like the Cardinals, in quotations, are interested in a certain player, right? So
it ain't the Savannah Bananas, which, by the way, we need to get the guy, if we can, we need to get that guy on the show. The GM of the Savannah Bananas would be an entertaining show. Yeah,
probably. That would be fun. We could ask him anything. I
We
mean,
got a bunch of guys we need to get on the show. We need to get Adam Gore back on the show.
Isn't that your department?
It is.
Guest
It is.
booker.
And I'm going to try to continue to do that. Here's future guests on the show. Here's my bold prediction. Future guests on the show. The GM of the Savannah Bananas, Paul Dixon of the Dixon Baseball Dictionary. We're going to get W.M. Akers, writer and creator of the game Dead Ball, on the show. Those are some guys we're going to get on the show.
What about Albert Einstein?
I don't think he's around anymore.
Well, we should probably try to get him anyway.
Right.
So for Mike, for myself, thank you so much for watching. Click the like button if you like it. Subscribe. If you like podcasts, we have a podcast, so you should go check it out. It's called Long Live Baseball, and you can find it on Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. Mike, any final words of wisdom?
Hey, be alert for foul balls, and go Cubs go.
All right, let's go Cardinals. Let's go trade for Shane Bieber. Sign everybody in sight, and we'll see you next time. World Series, baby. Here we go. Bye-bye, everybody. Be good.